or we'll be looking at harmful gender and social norms and their effects and the role of the faith community in shifting those norms, especially as pertains to issues health. And as we talk about health, even more adolescents and young people. Faith to Action Network is a group of interfaith network. It is Southern-led, Southern-based. We are membership-based. We have, at the moment, about 143 members spread in Africa, Asia, Europe, and America. The members come from the different religions that we know: Baha'i, Buddhist, Christian, Hindu, Muslim, African traditional religions, and Confucius. And in terms of the work that we do, we work on programmatically on 3 thematic areas. We have 2 programmatic cross-cutting issues. The first one, we call it family health and well-being. Within this particular thematic area is where we look at issues to do with sexual and reproductive health and rights, family planning, maternal and child health, HIV/AIDS, and a number of other health-related issues. The second thematic area is what we call women rights and gender justice. And in this particular thematic area, we look at the issues that affect the relationships between men and women, the issues that affect women empowerment, whether we are talking about the social norms. We also look at issues to do with, for example, GBV, SGBV, just generally that the women participation in different areas that enable them to attain their full potential, whether it is in education, whether it is in private sector, whether it's in politics, or any other areas. The third area is what we call peaceful, just and inclusive communities. Within this particular thematic area, we look at the relationship between different religions, how they relate, how they partner, how they work together, with the belief that if different people from different religions can coexist, can live in cohesion, even communities will live in cohesion. We also, within that, look at the participation of religious institutions, faith actors, how they are involved in policy and decision making, and therefore do a lot of advocacy to ensure that that involvement is not inconsistent and it is not last minute. And we also look at the smaller religions and religious minorities and how they are also represented in consultations on policy and decision making. The cross-cutting thematic areas that I mentioned, one is nutrition and the second one is environment and climate change. I was trying to recall any facility that I have visited where you have a section where young people can go to that facility, health facility, and feel this is a place which is welcoming to me. How do you call the sections that provide sexual and reproductive health services? MCH. Where would a girl, say from 10 years or even 12 years, where would they go in a facility, health facility, when they are looking for services? The same place, isn't it? Because there is no other place. That is the place where services are provided. Whether they have a patient, that is where they would have to go and ask. Whom would they meet? They would meet mothers with babies, pregnant women, and nurses. If a nurse sees that girl there, would she think that she has come for services or she has accompanied the mother and or maybe was the one carrying the child? So that's the environment that is there in the structures that exist currently in our health facility. And I think this is even the first point that we need to think about when we are shifting norms. Because it has been the practice for a very long time. But that is now when we are dealing with issues, policy, how to make facilities youth friendly. It's the same thing with the faith community. In many health stations, we do not anticipate that young people, after they have gone through the vaccinations, especially after 5 years, that they will have a lot of health issues. Because even those that are very recurrent when you are young, a lot of the times you are told around 5 years this might go away. And indeed they go away, most of them. If they don't go away at that age, you are told maybe by around 15 years, this should be a thing of the past. I'm not a medic, but I have seen some medics nodding. The involvement of young people in decision making at different institutional levels, whether we are talking about at family level, at school level, at the places of worship, or any other or within government institutions, is one thing. And even how they should be served is still one thing, because the structures that exist haven't been built and over time tested to see whether they can be able to do that for them. So in religion, that definitely looks at the quality of life and considers the quality of life as a very, very pertinent issue. And also, quality of life is also dependent on the quality of the population. That's why when for example, missionaries started, since I'm speaking as also a Christian, when missionaries came to Africa, they would establish a place of worship, then a school, then a hospital. Those were almost like the three key things that they would do. And those things, generally, if you look at them, they are supposed to improve the quality of life of the population. And even for us, I believe most of us, except Father Charles, are from Kenya. And my brother, Dr. Fesad, I think most of the others are from Kenya. For when we are looking at the quality of life, quality of the population, health issues cannot be separated. And I think we have to look at the way the missionaries started, cannot be separated from the health of the body, cannot be separated from the spiritual health that is also promoted through the place of worship. It also requires that population is able to understand certain things. And that is why education then becomes very, very important. Our governments are very young. And most of them found religion when it was already established, with the schools, health facilities, and of course, the places of worship. So in terms of partners, as governments, partners in health, partners in education, if you miss the faith community, if you miss the faith community in those two areas, I don't know then what it would be that you'd say you are developing a policy for health or education if you miss to have the faith community present and engaged in that process. Even farming, agriculture. When I was growing up, in fact, when I was a student, one of the places I went to, I've not done agriculture, but one of the places I went to for attachment was in an extension, agriculture extension facility run by the faith community, introducing new ways of farming, new ways of managing animals to the communities. So the faith community has been contributing in very many areas of social development, and it cannot then be ignored. But then there are many, many changes that are happening that sometimes the faith community does not go in tandem with the changes. The issue of young people, changes in technology, so especially in information technology, We are talking about young people, social media, the way it is influencing. I recently saw in the UK, they are talking about social influencers and how they are influencing the behavior of students towards even teachers, especially pinpointing two who have, I think, instilled very negative masculinity ideas to young people. And those young people now in schools are behaving in very condescending ways, even to their teachers, because they are, I'm a boy. Because of social media, social influencers who have taken a certain approach in their social messaging. And it has been followed by very, very many young people. In Sweden, I think they have put a caveat on who can access certain social media. It was a registration that was passed in Parliament. If it is not 16, it is 18. And there was protest from children or from young people on that restriction. But the restriction was actually done in Parliament through a registration. Why are they doing that in what we would consider to be developed countries? Because they have seen the influence that social media has on young people. So that is one of the changes. How is religion then facing up to this particular change? How is religion responding to the changing sort of definition of family? Because the family is also changing. For many of us, we have experience with extended families. People going, when there are holidays, going home, up country, meeting with the extended family members, brothers and sisters. Nowadays, you find that many people are not traveling up country, they are traveling to the coast and other places for holidays. So the extended family slowly is breaking. What about the cultural expectation of what an auntie was supposed to do to children in terms of instilling education and the skills that they were supposed to pass? An uncle, a grandfather, a grandparent, a grandmother. Has that concept changed? It hasn't completely changed. You still hear people say, "Siaende kwa auntie yake," not realizing that your auntie, ama your uncle, they have no relationship with this family. Yeah? But people expect that it is still, because that was a norm that takes a very long time to change, and norms take time to change. We have now families that are headed by grandmothers. When Ziko, maybe it is from where I come from. Families headed by grandmothers. Their children have passed on, but they have left grandchildren who are being taken care of by grandparents. Tell me, when you have a grandmother taking care of children, when I was growing up, we knew that if you have gone to your grandparents' place, first you come out very spoiled. Unarudi na matusi, you get to know once that your parents cannot speak to you openly, yeah? And it was still part of the extended family reason, all culture of the extended family. Because when they are doing that, they are exposing you to things that your parents, because of the norms, they cannot directly tell you. So they talk to you about marriage and use very explicit language, that by the time you are coming back to your parents, you know some things that you didn't know. And you got to know them through your grandparents. So now, this is the grandparent who is taking care of who is heading a family. Who is going to regulate how that is done, the education? We also have children on the streets, or families in the streets these days. We have seen them. I'm from the Anglican Church. We struggled with single mothers for a very long time. Where do you place them? Because first, being single, being a mother, the element of why not married, how did she get a child out of wedlock, all those, all that. So there was a lot of struggle, and it took a lot of time up to the point where the church could then have them join Mothers Union formally. It took a lot of time. But is it happening in the Catholic Church? Are they joining? So we call it SWI. Yes. See. Yeah. Are they joining these days? So it's also recent. I know also the Presbyterian Church now. These days they are also joining. But it has been a struggle. That was because who was supposed to be a mother in that association? Somebody who is in a marriage where there is a man and wife and children. That was the expectation. It was the norm that we had. Out of those experiences, and out of the fact that changes have come, that norm is changing. In terms of even the definition of that family. Who is in a family? What is a family? Engaging the faith actors has been very inconsistent, especially by government. Let me put it that way. And I don't know how many people are from the government in this forum, but it has been very inconsistent, which has led to under-leveraging on what the faith community can do or can help do in changing and shifting norms. When you're looking at HPV, for example, all along as we grew up, vaccines are normally given to children, isn't it? That has been the norm. Vaccines are given to children. The other vaccines that are normally given, they are given to those who are traveling. Yellow fever, hepatitis. If you are going to a place that has cholera, then it is even indicated you need to take a jab of cholera. But this middle age, was it getting any vaccines? There wasn't something about young people getting any vaccine. Whom does HPV, what ages does it target? 10 to 14. In an environment where we have always known vaccines are for children and travelers. I have a daughter who is now 12 years, and in their school, they are going to get the HPV. But they were informed at least in advance, like a day before. So when she came, said, Daddy, we have been told we will get HPV vaccine tomorrow. Should I go to school? That was the question. I'm not a child. This vaccine that we've been given. The teacher has explained to us what it is about. But even the children themselves, they have questions. Now, come to parents, they have questions. Come to religious leaders, they have questions. And the questions even go deeper. Why this particular age group and why girls? Because the boys were never included in the HPV vaccine. Why girls? Why this age group? And then, of course, theories start forming. Why are we targeting our girls when they are just becoming and forming to become women of reproductive age? Is it related? Did you happen to get those kind of questions? Yes. Even Sheikh, you got it? What? So what was your response? And I think that's what our sister talked about, that the vaccine was introduced before proper sensitization. And dealing with these misconceptions was not addressed properly. So it brought in a lot of resistance. At some point, It was even assumed that it is laced with family planning. Even in the news, it was there. And there was a lot of resistance. But I think with more exposure to the information that was necessary to be introduced before the vaccine, acceptance has also now slowly settling in. It's slowly settling in. And especially also people are coming to terms with the effects of cervical cancer and other such cancers. And therefore, to me, as we look at harmful social and cultural norms and the role of the faith in shifting those norms, I would want us to start from where we are now. Where we are at the point of more information has been shared around this, for example, HPV, we know and everybody acknowledges, because it's always in the news around September, October, they are very active in reporting about teenage pregnancies. And they report scary numbers. Are you also scared about the numbers that you have seen? But yet, when we are talking about, can these girls get services? Can these young people get services? Can they get information? Can they get education? There is a struggle around age-appropriate sexuality education in schools. It came with a term in the faith community, at least we call it age-appropriate sexuality education. But it came with a term called comprehensive sexuality education. And that term in itself became a very big issue. What is going to be comprehensive to a child who is in class 1, class 2, class 3? So comprehensive in itself became a very big barrier. It has been an intense struggle to even agree that this education is needed or this information is needed. Even now, there is no proper content that has been fully agreed upon. It's still under development and still under discussion, because I know there is a national task force that is looking into the issue of age-appropriate sexuality education, and a number of religious representatives or representatives from the faith sector are there. So with that, then, I want to welcome the panelists who will be sharing a bit more on the issue of shifting norms, addressing harmful gender and social norms, and how the faith community can help in shifting those norms so that they are no longer having the same effects that they have to the community as it is now.
That I belong to Women of Faith Network under Interreligious Council of Kenya. It includes all religions, all denominations. It is a group that we started back in 2008. We know what happened in 2007. And so when, from the leadership of the church, and we would go and visit women where they were located and their children, giving them food and all that, we could meet everybody there. May I be a Catholic, may it be a Muslim, may it be who. And so, as we were discussing, we asked ourselves, what can we do? It means that whatever problem comes, it doesn't have any boundary. That is how we started. Our main agenda is to bring everybody on board. And what we do, we come together, we visit places, especially in Nairobi. Nairobi and Kiambu is covered under one group. And we go to preach more about health, and more about health and peace. When I am present in such a forum, I just remember that yesterday we were somewhere in Kiambu. We just visited a slum and we had a very lengthy discussion with women and their children. And we talked about health, we talked about gender-based violence. And that is our joy when we see everybody on board and when we see health and peace together. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. May peace be with you. I want to believe every one of us wants peace. That's why we are here. My name is Sheikh Ibrahim Lepo from the Muslim community. I am a Muslim religious scholar from Jamia Mosque. I also advise the Supreme Council of Kenya Muslims. I'm an active member of Faith to Action Network. I work very closely with Peter Monene here. And for me, my mission has been to prove that religion is not a liability in addressing problems facing humanity, but an asset. And if you ask me, an indispensable asset to address that. Currently, we are using religion, that is Islam, to address violent extremism, because unfortunately, religion is increasingly being misused, and also that leads to misconception about religion. So I feel as religious leaders, we have a big role in correcting misconceptions about religion to prove that God did not give us religion to be a liability, but an asset to help us navigate the challenges of life. I'll be talking more. This was just introduction, nothing more.
My name is Shina Mbao. I work with the Faith to Action Network, and I'm currently leading a program where we want to evidence that what Sheikh has said. We want to evidence and document that faith is an asset in the health sector. We want to bring about new knowledge within government, within development sector, of how they can effectively engage faith actors, the how, the what, and our aim is just to collect and collate everything that we are doing in this spaces and to amplify it.
My name is Godfrey Adira. I am a priest from the Anglican Church of Kenya. I'm also an academic. I teach systematic theology and gender studies at St. Paul's University in Limuru. And I am so glad to be here. This conversation is in line with my PhD that investigated how community health workers or health promoters or health volunteers from where I was born, called Nyamrerwa, utilize faith-based strategies to support and shifting gender norms that permit and enable the triple threat challenge. So I am glad to bring theological perspectives as a lecturer, but also from our own research. Thank you.
Social norms are just the written rules of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable in our society, right? It's not particularly true or factual, but it's just how we behave. For example, if you walk in a room, it's a norm that you greet the people you meet, right? If a high-level leader walks in this room, you'll see all of us starting to stand, right? It's not written anywhere. It is not factual that we should stand when they walk in, but it's just something we do because that's just how things are done, right? And sometimes we overlook the role of these norms and these behaviors in terms of how they affect health and uptake of health within our communities. First, I want to applaud the faith communities for the investments they have done in health. Like we were saying, most of the facilities, most of the outreaches, everything that we have done is commendable. The government has given us free HPV vaccines. They're in our facilities. The government has built health facilities, and there's so much investments in terms of health. But this is not a reflection of the data we are seeing. Still, so many mothers are dying due to pregnancy-related complications, right? Still, we have so many new HIV infections, right? Still, we have so many children, neonates, dying at birth, right? The vaccines are there, but people are not taking them up. And this is because all these investments don't operate in a vacuum. They operate in communities, in cultures where we have norms where we question things, where we say we don't do that. Like Peter was saying, it's a norm that we don't vaccinate adolescents. So if that is going to change, we would have many, many questions, because that's not how we do things, right? And in the question of health, we feel like changing the hearts and the minds of the people, that's the norms and the behaviors, is where the gap is in terms of changing the indicators. And someone will ask ourselves, which norms really do affect our health uptake? And I'll just start with 1 or 2, 3 norms that we feel. So one of them is sexuality norms. And it's the small things in how we talk. For example, when we have a very young girl child who is very beautiful, people often sexualize that child in their comments, right? If you have a very young boy who is handsome, you'll hear comments like, "Huyu atawamaliza." This one will have so many girlfriends, right? If it's a small girl child, you will say, "The bride price for this one, the parents will enjoy," right? It's a norm. You don't even think about it. It just comes out, right? But what are you teaching, or what are you indoctrinating in this child as they grow up, right? What are you indoctrinating in this young, handsome man as he grows up, right? You're basically telling them, because of how you look, you have a card to have many girlfriends. You are allowed, right? You're giving the pressure to this girl, because of how you look, we expect you to fetch a high bride price, right? And in their mind, it is being conceptualized. As they're growing up also, we get to the very difficult topic, sex. I don't know why, even there's someone who mentioned types of sex, and sex just creates so much discomfort just from saying those words. And because it is a norm, right? We just don't say sex. It is a norm. But what has this norm brought about within access to health? So when we hear that the HPV vaccine is being given to girls who are not sexually active, we hear sex, we are like, no. We have already, because it's mentioning of the word sex, and it is not a norm to mention the word sex, we already put a barrier, right? When the children are growing up, we are trying to tell them the parts of their bodies. We are saying this is an arm, this is a leg. We come to the sexual organ, we are struggling. Yeah? We want to say doo-doo, we want to say things that the child themselves doesn't understand. So even in the cases of sexual abuse, when this child is abused, they will not even know what to say. You can imagine if a child was being abused, God forbid, and they would tell that person, "Stop touching my penis," even to the abuser. That's a shocker to them, right? But the norms and our socialization around how we handle the topic of sex goes further to make it hard for health services, right? Even when they become adolescents and we're talking about sex, right? We're talking about us as faith actors speaking about sex in the context of marriage, right? But we don't want to explain why. What someone was saying in the morning, I think it's Sheikh Shaban, about having sex within a marriage to make sure you're safe, to make sure you are with one partner. We don't want to explain. We are like, that is the rule, that is how it is, don't ask me questions. Yeah? And we are having a generation, unfortunately, that is very inquisitive. They will want to know why. And if you teach them in terms of, don't ask me questions, that is the norm. We don't ask questions around sex. Then they will grow up trying to find information from other sources, trying to find information from their peers, and in the course of it, getting wrong information. The other norm maybe I'll highlight is decision-making power. Decision-making power is still with the men, is still with the mother-in-laws. Those of us who work in healthcare have seen women who have suffered dire maternal mortality because their husbands, their mother-in-laws will not allow them to get a CS or a C-section. So we are there, it's an emergency, you need to go to theater, but we have to almost calling the ancestors so that that decision can be made. And it's a good norm that men make decisions within our community, right? But to what extent is the norm helping us in terms of our health access, right? We have also other norms like stigma. Peter talked about unmarried women who are pregnant, and especially girls, right? They do not go to health facilities because of the fear, the shame that will come with that. They will hide it and wear 50 clothes until there's no option. So they miss their ANCs, they miss their maternity clinics. Unmarried women who are pregnant will not come to church or places of worship until 6 months postpartum because of the fear, the shame, the stigma, right? They will not want to be associated, but it is a no. When you see someone pregnant, you expect that they are married. But what can we do about that? Then the last one I'll talk about is around gendering health. Health is viewed as a woman's issue, right? Men rarely access health services. Actually, there's a man who said, if you see me going to hospital, they are dying. It is terrible, right? And it is a norm. They have been normalized that health-seeking behavior is not your role. Very few men test for HIV infections. Very few men test for any forms of cancers. They test through their proxies. My wife was tested, so me, I'm okay. Yeah? And it's just a norm that we have continued to push. They have no clue around pregnancy apart from that they must participate. They have no clue of pregnancy duration, how it works, danger signs in pregnancy, how many ANCs, vaccination. They have no clue. And unfortunately, men not being in the forefront of health is a very big issue for health sector, because most of the people who are in leadership and who hold leadership positions in health, in government, in our facilities, in our religious institutions are men, right? So if it's not a priority for them, how will it be a priority for their congregants? How will it be a priority for the country's population? And so this is a norm we must begin to change. And these are the kind of norms that we are saying have effect on health uptake. So I just wanted to say religious leaders and us as religious actors, we have a very unique position in terms of addressing these norms. We have a voice that people listen to. We have a voice that people really trust. That if a religious leader today in a Friday sermon in a mosque spoke to men and told them they need to take away the norm that they are not involved in health. And we see more men being concerned about their health, more men being concerned about the health of their wives, their children and their girls. We will see better health uptake within the community, right? If we see men being talked to about, for example, the HPV vaccine or pregnancy, right? If we have faith leaders talking about stigma and supporting pregnant girls and how these can help change the narrative and how this can help save our girls and our women. So I think my biggest role was to show the relationship between the norms and how they affect health uptake and utilization within our communities.
We must appreciate that increasingly the world is realizing that for us to be able to address the many problems and challenges facing society, then we need to involve religion and religious leaders and institutions. Why am I saying that? I remember sometimes back attending a conference, and it was like a debate between policymakers and religious leaders, and the question was this: is religion an asset or a liability in humanitarian work? Somebody might feel that very surprising, but there are people who believe that actually religion is a liability. And I'll be sharing examples of where religion has been, I'll say here, very deliberately because, and I can speak authoritatively, that religion actually is an indispensable asset in addressing challenges and a strategic partner for policymakers, for governments, and any other stakeholders. And I'll be giving reasons for that. Now, religious leaders' role in shifting harmful social and gender norms. The norms have already been given and examples of those norms. And of course, we have so many norms, some of them good, some of them harmful. Do we have a role? And of course, when they are harmful, they have a negative impact in society. Okay, do we have a role to intervene? I am an advocate, and now moving around talking to my colleague religious scholars in the Muslim community, that I think we need to repackage religion. We need to look at religion as it was intended by God. I believe most of us got it wrong. Sorry for the religious leaders sitting here. I think we put a lot of emphasis on religion as a vehicle to go to heaven. Yes. And when it comes to the world, leave it to others. I want to disagree with that totally. And what has been the effect of that? The shakaholas of this world. The people who are taken to shakahola, it is because somebody claiming to be a religious leader convinced them that this world is not for you. You need to meet the Lord. So religion became a shortcut to heaven, perpendicularly. Taking religion as a vehicle to go to heaven has led us to the Al-Shabaabs of this world and others. Misuse religion and convince people this world is not my home. My home is there. So we need to look at religion as a vehicle to help us navigate in this world as we wait to go there. Because we have to believe there is a there after death, but for the time being, we are here and we have a role to play here. So what is the role of religious leaders? Remember, in every community, religious leaders are seen, and this is a terminology that I use, and I'll give you a case study where we effectively use it. The custodians of their communities, the gatekeepers of their communities. Yes, I learned that the hard way. For a long time, and I want to believe even some of you sitting here, when we look at one of the harmful social norms or gender norms in many communities, female genital mutilation is there. And I call it violence that is celebrated. Yes, people do it, they celebrate it. Especially where my brother comes from, when they were doing it, I'm sure Irua was a celebration. Is it not so? Yeah, it was celebrated. Yes. So, I was, in 2008, there was this big problem of female genital mutilation amongst the Somalis and the Muslims, and some religious scholars saying it is a religious practice. I crossed over to Ethiopia and I realized even the Coptic church also, some people are saying it is a religious practice. Now, the approach at first was this: medics, social workers, and the government cracking the whip. It is illegal. And let me tell you, they could not achieve anything. Until somebody said, can we use the religious scholars? And that's why we came up with a religious-oriented approach to ending female genital mutilation. Because these people wrongly believe it is a religious practice. We had to come now with the correction of misconceptions about religion. And for those of you who want to read the toolkit we came up with, just Google, it is free online, Delinking Female Genital Mutilation from Islam. That is a toolkit we developed in 2008. That actually is in line with the teachings of Islam, but corrects that misconception. Why was it acceptable by the people? It's because it was now the religious leaders who were spearheading the campaign, a credible voice. And what were they using? The user's manual. They were using the Quran. Because for me as a Muslim, the user's manual, and I like giving this analogy, when you buy a Toyota vehicle, the Japanese, who is the manufacturer, gives you a user's manual. The author is the manufacturer. Why is the author the manufacturer? He is best knowledgeable about the if you go and look at, if you buy Mercedes-Benz and then you use a user's manual from Japan, wrong. So God created us, created this world, and He gave us the user's manual. When you have a problem, refer to the user's manual. Who is the credible voice to interpret the user's manual? The religious leader. So religion is an asset. Another case study where we have been successful, and Munene was part of that, Islam and family planning. First of all, Munene learned the hard way. If you want to talk to the Muslim community about family planning, drop the family planning and come up with child spacing. Munene had to accept that is what we are going to use, and it worked. Yes. What am I saying? Use an approach that is sensitive to the religious values. Munene had the option of saying, whether you want it or not, I'm going to use family planning. I don't know where you have gotten with that. But he used some of us, and actually we used the Quran. And any religious leader from the Muslim community here who is opposed to family planning, I'll just tell you very quickly, open the user's manual, Quran chapter 2, verse 233, where mothers are told to breastfeed. وَالْوَالِدَاتُ يُرْضِعْنَ أَوْلَادَهُنَّ حَوْلَيْنِ كَامِلَيْنِ لِمَنْ أَرَادَ أَنْ يُتِمَّ الرَّضَاعَةَ. And mothers shall breastfeed their children for 2 complete years. Now, how do you achieve the 2 complete years of breastfeeding? You either go and work in Saudi Arabia for 2 years, oh yes, or have a separate bedroom there, or be very good in using what I call the beads, the safe days, and men are very weak when it comes to using the safe days. So you're left with no option. Okay. Now, religion can also change those social norms, and I like what you say here. We don't even ask them. As I was training elders and scholars in Mandera about family planning and contraceptives, because for some of them, it is no, this is a conspiracy from the West to make sure our population does not grow. Yet we are told, the Prophet, peace be upon him, says, can you marry women who can give birth to more children so that on the day of judgment, I will be proud of my huge community. So reproduce. But without planning, no. So I like sometimes joking with the scholars. I told them, at break time, if you found me outside a shop in Mandera and I pick condoms from the supermarket, first of all, some of them say, Sheikh, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. May God protect us from the devil. I asked him, hold on, I don't know where the devil has come in now. I'm trying to tell you, I, Ibrahim Lethome, a religious scholar, I get into a supermarket and I pick trust condoms. What will you think about me? You must be a very bad person. Tell me why. Tell me, what wrong have I done by picking this? You must be having a mpango wakando here. I said, look, why don't you begin by saying, maybe I came with my wife. Or maybe, as Latif said, I got married here to a second wife. Why do you want to begin from, I am promiscuous, whatever it is. So, there are a lot of misconceptions, and some of these harmful norms, actually, are supported by misconceptions about religion. Take, for example, early and forced marriages. Islam has been accused wrongly of promoting early and forced marriages. And the norms, the negative norms that promote that. If you leave this girl after she has attained puberty, without her getting married, she will be promiscuous. I've never heard anybody saying if you leave this boy, after they start getting the wet dreams, they will be promiscuous. Again, you can see a gender discrimination on that, okay? So they say, as soon as this girl sees her menses, you must get her married, whether she wants it or not. And you ask them, where did you get it from? Yet, in the teachings of Islam, you're told, a marriage is only valid if it fulfills certain conditions. And one of them, the consent of the girl. The consent of the girl. Then the consent of the guardian or the father. And as a lawyer, I can tell you, if there is a conflict between the consent of the father, the girl says, "Huyu ndio atanioa, I'll be married by this person." And the father says, "No, you'll be married by that." The religion tells you the consent of the girl will be given preference over the consent of the father. Yes, it happened at the time of the prophet, peace be upon him. A woman came and said, "My father is forcing me to marry that person, but I don't like the shape of his head." Does the woman have that right? The answer is yes. Yes, but in the African culture, again mixed with misconception about religion, because I know what my mother would do. She would just hold her stomach and her breast and say, "Kama ulinyonya hii, utaolewa na huyu." Yes, that's what they would do. But and really, kama unataka, if you want God to be happy with you, my choice is your choice. Is that religion? No. Actually, the girl was told by the prophets, and the sheikh are here, they will tell you, she was told. Actually, he did not even ask her, "Why don't you like this guy?" The girl said, "I don't want this person. My father wants him." He said, "Your father has no right to do that." We are using that in court. As we are speaking now, I have a case in court where a father has said no, and the girl in Lamu, the girl has said yes, and we are in court defending the girl using religion that the girl has a right. So the role of religious teaching, the religious institution, for me, I think they have a very strategic role and very powerful. Why? The power of religion should not be underestimated. The power of religion. I ask people sometimes, how many of you have contributed to build the house of God? Your own hard-earned money you contributed. I'm sure all of you here. Who will pay you back? I'll be paid there. Where? I believe I'll be paid there. I call that the power of religion. Yes? We even see powerful politicians in the face of the power of religion, they even kneel down and cry. And I'm not going to mention names, and don't imagine any names. I call that the power of religion. So we can use it properly. And according to me, the power of religion lies in three things. One, religion is very emotive, more emotive than anything else. The power of religion. Religion promises reward beyond this world. Nitalipwa huko. None of us has gone there, but we believe. Number three, to many of us, it is unquestionable. Neno linasema, na neno likisema, lazima lifuatwe. Is it not so? That's what we say in the church. In the mosque we say that, Mwenyezi Mungu kanena, sami'na wa ata'na. We listen and obey. That's why religion becomes a very powerful and strategic partner in addressing harmful norms. Now, where is the problem? Where is the disconnect? For me, the disconnect is this. She is a medical expert. I am a religious leader. We need to talk with each other, not at each other. Munene took me to Iala, Rwanda, to go and discuss with parliamentarians on legislation for the region on reproductive health rights. He took me, took a Catholic priest. Can you help in looking at this document? When you send me to Rwanda, the moment the parliamentarians and NGOs saw religious leaders, conclusion number one, they've come here to oppose it. Then I stood up and told them, who told you we've come here to oppose it? Monene had taken us through an exercise in the whole region where we had consulted with religious leaders, and actually we had just amended very few areas. And mostly, can you come up with legislation to address sexual and reproductive health issues in the region, but can they be sensitive to our faith? That is the only thing we could put in that document. But the conclusion by the NGOs, you are a liability to this, so we move you out. And that's where we get it wrong. We need to work together. Why is it sometimes religious leaders oppose what is being done by policy leaders and the rest? And I'm talking from experience. Lack of information. Monene, if I ask questions and I don't have information, I will speculate. It's human nature. You start speculating. Actually, when we went to Northeastern Province to talk about against female genital mutilation, first speculation, mumetumwa na America. You've been sent here by the Americans. Why? I am working for an organization called the Population Council. Headquarters, New York. This is a conspiracy against Muslims. Now, look at the contradiction. A few meters from where I am training against FGM, using the Quran. I'm not saying Bush said or Trump said, I'm saying Allah said, the Prophet said. There is a well being drilled there to supply people with water. When I look at the organization that is drilling the well, is USAID. Now, water is good from them, but when a program is funded by them, a program. But the reason is what? Nobody has taken time to sit down and sensitize the people. So, madam, just sit down with us. Tell us what is the human papilloma virus. Virusi vya papilloma vya binadamu kitu gani? Yeah, then we move together like that. Yeah. So what am I trying to say? Try to share information, and believe me, it will be so easy. You can imagine, you convince me, on Friday I go to Jamia Mosque. I'm giving a sermon there, 10,000 people. Latif knows, in Ramadan we even close the road there. Imagine I share that information with the people, and actually I will use a verse in the Quran to bring in the expertise I've gotten from you. Because in the Quran we are told, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask those who know if you know not. So I'll be quoting you and saying, she is an expert. God has given her that knowledge, and she told me this is how we can prevent HPV. So how many people will you have reached? 10,000. Okay? And they're not hearing it from you. They are getting it from a credible voice, according to them, a person who is quoting from their own book. So can you work with us? Can you talk with us? Not at us. On the other hand, we need also, as you educate us, can you allow us to educate you also? When I tell Monene, who is an expert in that area, Monene, can we use child spacing for the Muslim community? Then Monene tells me, Sheikh, whether you want it or not, we'll use family planning. We'll not get anywhere. So allow us to educate you. Are you ready for that? We'll educate. Ask me, which approach works with the Muslim community? And believe me, I'll tell you, and together we can work together. Conclusion, religion is an indispensable asset in bringing about the shift of the harmful norms in society. I rest my case.
When we look at the issue of shifting the norms to promote the vaccine uptake, we cannot do it without having tools. And what tools can we use, to bring the community close to us so that they accept in participating in this uptake of the vaccine? When we look at especially the HPV, faith is key in influence to or resistance to some of the practices. And in this regard, immunization. What tool can we use? We can use a tool of health promotion. This is giving messages. This is promoting the vaccine. This is promoting health. And it cannot work if we are not going to involve the key stakeholders in this, the faith leaders, in co-designing the process. And that's why we are saying that vaccine was started without involving the leaders in faith, and then they are coming back to collect them. The journey has become too narrow. It is not possible. So, not unless we involve them from the start of everything. That is, involving them in co-designing the process, because they have a say. As what Imam says, that they are the gatekeepers of the community. This can be done through training. As Imam says, he doesn't have any information about HPV. So what can he tell the community? What can he tell that congregation? not unless he's trained. When we look at the ministry, when they are almost, to start an activity, to launch an activity, there are trainings all over. Do we see the health readers involved? So if they are not involved, then believe you me not, there is a very big population that will not get the information. And when we look at this, we look at the male gender. He may not go to church, he may not go to the hospital, but when it comes to listening to a certain faith reader, they usually do. So whenever there is an activity about health in that church compound, in that mosque compound, he will listen. He will listen when it is in the screen. So if Imam is in the screen and he doesn't have any information, how will he get it? So we are saying that we need health promotion in all aspects. And more so, the analysis need to be done. Once they have done the training, they have to do the analysis and have a feedback. We can have a faith leader who has given out a suggestion, but they don't know whether it was acted on, because nobody informed them when they are giving the feedback. The analysis was done. So the leader will just sit somewhere and say, after all, I don't know where my message is. We have to use promising messages of best practices. When we look at more about immunization or vaccination, just look at how the uptake of anti-rabies vaccine, anti-venom vaccine. If any of us experiences an injury, whoever it is, including the imam, he will urge to go and get an anti-rabies vaccine, isn't it? Isn't it? If you have by coincidence you have a snake bite, you urge for it. Can we have best practice, messages? We borrow them from what has been accepted across board to use in the new, the new vaccines that are coming up. And for instance, the HPV. What messages can we use? Where can we borrow the leaf from? Those are the tools that we can use in shifting the norms and thus accepting the vaccines within the community. We have practices where it is a norm. I don't know whether it's a norm. Who said that it's only the mother who can take a child for immunization? Who said it? The father to this child should be included. But then you find that it is very harsh, because what we have right now, we use a booklet called Mother to Child booklet. And you expect Imam to hold that book to the health facility? It is written Mother to Child. The father is not inclusive. I don't know where this baby came from. So, those are the negative messages that we have there out. So, even if he holds it, he'll have to hide it, because now he's not the mother. So we have also to visit some of these practices that are there. And when it was being inquired whether we have somebody from the Ministry of Health, it is so sad that they are not, but I believe they will get the message that this child belongs to a father and mother, and that we have to change these things. We have to change some of the practices that we are having. Does it mean that by coincidence, if the mother passes, that the father will not keep that book? He will keep the book. But remember, it will still be reminding him that this book belongs to the mother and child. It's nowhere. Until the 18 years are there, when he will hand over the book to the owner, when the owner turns 18, it is still tormenting the father. So we need to change, but we have to partner. That interfaith partnership with the ministry when we are planning, so that the leaders have a say and they are on board, so that we work together. We have the use of community health workers. It's so sad that when you go there out in the community, who are wearing those blue jackets, what is the most percentage? It's the women. Where are the men? They are working. And still we can see them walking. So it means that even if this gentleman wants to listen wants to get the message, they still feel excluded. So even in the line of health, we have those norms whereby it's the woman who is responsible for that health. It's the woman who can give out a message and be heard well. So we need men inclusive in this process so that we achieve 100%, if not 99%, in the update. There is networking. What do I mean by networking? If we have the ministry working within themselves and they are not involving the leaders in the community in terms of faith, and yet on Sunday I walk to church, then there will be a fail somewhere. We need to network as leaders. Is it political? Is it faith-based? Is it health? We need to network so that we read from the same page. And doing so, we can have an uptake that is more achievable than what we are having today. When we have those vaccine drives, especially when they are doing launching, does it mean that there is no pastor, no imam who can pray for the a start of a journey for it to be successful? Whom do you see in the screen? We see the high level. They are starting those activities, but you find nobody like a church leader there. When we wake up, we start with a prayer. If you are a believer, whichever be, is it a Muslim, is it a who, we start with a prayer. If you start a drive that without a prayer, without calling God to that journey, do you think it will be successful? There will be hitches here and there. So we'd like to see the faith leaders involved when they are launching those drives. If we cannot build together, then we cannot sustain together. What will happen is that achievement of universal healthcare is a thing of it's a dream that will not be achieved. If we cannot hold such activities in those mosque areas, I don't know whether according to Imam they can accept for a drive to be held in the mosque area. If we cannot hold it in those church grounds, if we cannot hold it where we see people go to pray, then we are not attaching them. We are not attaching that activity with faith. And in today, the life today, we are all believers and we are all worshippers. We have to work together for us to achieve. On the cutting short, I want to say that we need to engage religious leaders to support activities in regard to immunization and to share accurate information for us to achieve the universal health care. Thank you.
But I want to begin from just a small reflection based on what my colleagues have said. You can see that religion has power to convene and to convince. So they will bring people together, convening and convincing. And in so doing, religion is one thing that provides language for most of the conversations people have in the public spaces. For example, I have learned that in our community advocacy work, many people will not use a policy language, they will not use a health-based language, they have something about our religion, our imam said, our pastor said. And so the fact that religion has power to convene and convince, I appreciate the sentiment of Sheikh here, that then religion becomes a strategic partner. But there are four manifestations of religious engagement when it comes to matters health, matters gender, and even shifting these norms. I see, from where I sit and work, I see four manifestations. Number one, there's religion that is complicit, that says, okay, it is what it is, there is nothing we can do about it. That's what the Bible says, that's what the Holy Quran says, that's what our African culture is. So they become a complicit, and as such becomes an enabler of supporting and pushing harmful gender norms. Number two, I see a religion that is conforming. A conforming religion is a religion that is a bystander and says that conversation is outside my domain. That's something, let health workers talk about it, not for me in the church space or a religious space. So there's a religion that then becomes a conformist and as such a bystander. But number three, and I think that's where I invite all of us to belong, is a religion that is confronting that there are harmful gender norms and social norms and they need to be shifted. Confronting religion, and I also appreciate the sentiment from my colleagues here about the case studies of religion confronting harmful gender norms. Number three, and before the last one, is religion that is comforting that there are people that have been injured by harmful gender norms in different ways, either injured physically or injured mentally, emotionally, psychologically, and religion, with the language of comforting, religion needs to come to the space of becoming the healer or the healing balm in that space. So having said those four religions that I see, what then do we do as theologians and people who teach at the university, teaching pastors and people to become ministers in the community? Three approaches that we use in terms of how we implement our education. Number one is a decolonial approach. That theology must be decolonized. Some of you who have been in any theological class know that up to this century, we still talk about Thomas Aquinas, that is very good. As Anglicans talk about Augustine, that is very good. And talk about, especially, I know this is difficult to say, we talk about able-bodied old white men theology in an African context in this century. And there has been lots of research from the African continent by African scholars, many of them. And African scholarship is not highlighted, is not appreciated in many theological spaces, because then people think African scholarship does not meet the Western epistemological frameworks that is the only framework in academic spaces. Challenging that Western epistemologies and Western pedagogies are not a standard, it's not universal, that African realities requires an African research-based approach, requires an African framework, requires an African approach to addressing them. So, for example, family issues. In Kenya currently, there's a conversation around family values. And I ask myself, whose values are we propagating? Whose values are we talking about? They need nuclear family values that travel to Africa. Yet African societies, like I think the director said, African societies, we had extended families where myself, I am not only my father's child, even my uncle can talk to me when I'm going out of the way and still stop me. Today, there somebody's child, if you're not the father or the mother, even the mother will tell you, what are you telling to my kid? And so because we have borrowed a neat nuclear family concept that has traveled to Africa. So number one is that decolonial approach. How do we engage using African frameworks, African language? I like the conversation. What is HPV in African languages? How do we engage that? The second approach that is important also is intersectional approach, intersectionality. In shifting gender norms, we must recognize that harmful gender norms affect people differently. Somebody from where they are in terms of their social class, in terms of their academic qualification level, in terms of, in Kenya, in terms of their tribe, where they are, the way they experience gender norms is different. In terms of their age, in terms of ability and disability. And so I love the health approach that includes an intersectional approach. In the way we teach theology, in the recent past, through the wisdom, and I must acknowledge this, through the wisdom of what is called African women theologians, and there are many of them. I can talk about in Kenya, and I know Catholics may know some of these people, Anna Simiyu Wasike, Teresia Hinga, Mercy Amba Oduyoye, Esther Mombo, African women scholars who began to talk about gender from an intersectional perspective by beginning to say the way gender norms affect women and men are different based on where they are. And so there's a need for an intersectional approach. And finally, the approach that then also is very important is, and for lack of a better word, I will call it transdisciplinary. And I mean, in a theological space, as a lecturer, I am supposed to teach psychology, sociology, and then I'm supposed to teach issues about the law, and then teach theology. But of course, that's not an easy thing to do. So do we have medical practitioners or people in the psychology space, qualified psychologists, coming to teach pastors what psychology is? Not pastors like me. I may be trained because as a theologian. Oh, sorry for that. Was that my phone? Yeah, because as a pastor, I am trained as a theologian. I teach systematic theology from an African perspective, but I'm not a master of all the fields. So if I want to tell a pastor to be a counselor in the streets every Sunday or every day they meet there, and he does not have counseling skills that comes from a professional, that pastor is half-baked. Into a transdisciplinary approach that acknowledges that a theology space is not a preserve for pastors, not a preserve for theologians, but a space that is open for people. I like the language of Sheikh about gatekeepers. As a young person, young people don't like the word gatekeeping, so we say gate opening. So from religious gatekeepers to gate openers. Can we open theological spaces for multidisciplinary engagement? We can take an example. I love the way Catholics train their fathers and people in the religious space. They are trained in ways that they become a master of one particular thing, theologians, but they know a lot. So they know a lot of things about everything, and they know so much about their field. So how can we then embrace that as a way of talking about gender from a multidisciplinary approach? I conclude by giving an example of what happens in St. Paul's University. In the gender department, there's an approach called ISJA. An approach that is used to talk about shifting gender norms. ISJA. I for intersectionality, S for C, J for judge, and A for action. And so from an intersectional lens, what do we see? Simple. What happens? For example, we see a lot of statistics in Kenya about teenage pregnancy. But what lies behind that teenage pregnancy? The aspect of judge, analysis. What are the enablers of those teenage pregnancy cases, for example, in Kenya? If there are statistics that have been released, and continually they are being released, we say those are not numbers. Those are real people. Those are real human beings. And so in the aspect of judge, what lies behind those numbers? If you look deeply, you would see harmful gender norms. If you look deeply, you would see economic issues. If you look deeply, you would see different issues. And so that's why a or trans-disciplinary approach is important because of the aspect of judging or analysis. What do we see beyond the statistics? Finally, action. A stands for action. So how do we come up with actions? And I love what Jen has said. How do we make actions an everyday reality? Sometimes the problem we have, and I am a victim of this as a pastor, the problem we have is that I stand at the pulpit on Sunday and I talk about so many things, speaking to someone's heart, and that's it. I speak nothing to their mind and nothing to their hands. What I mean is, they are not challenged to think deeply about anything. I simply promise them heaven. And I don't tell them about the way to heaven passes through earth. And on earth, there are issues we must deal with. And so they are for the hand. What do you need to do after my sermon on Sunday? I have asked people in church several times, after you say amen to my blessing, what happens to you? Does the situation change? Now that I prayed to you, does money come to your pocket? And Christians in Kenya were victims of this, that every 1st of January or 31st of December, we hold mega events and declare, this is your year of blessings, and receive the vehicles. How? where am I going to get those vehicles if I don't get a loan at the bank to go buy it? So action needs to go beyond what pastors declare to the heart, the mind. Am I supporting the Christian to shift the way they think around different issues? And beyond shifting that the way they think, what are the actions that I provide for them? So as I conclude, therefore, I invite ourselves to reflect on what Sheikh had said, that religion is not just a liability. I've told you, many people in our Kenyan society, from my research, the only resource they have for engagement is religion. They don't have policy language, they don't have health language, they don't have all this language, they have a religious language. And so, beyond the health-based approach in this conversation, how then do we also bring an aspect of value-based approach? Because if they have religion as the only resource, then a health-based approach is insufficient. A value-based approach would support a health-based approach, because then there is value clarification. Then there is shifting of norms. And finally, of course, I know from the American point of view, a right-based approach is something that people speak about, it's the right of the woman. Rights are very good things, but can we balance the right-based approach with the value-based approach and health-based approach? Thank you.
One of the key issues that mostly comes when we are looking at the role of faith leaders and trying to change some of these social norms and promoting behavioral change, such as promoting immunization, is the gap that exists when we are talking as faith leaders, as gatekeepers, allow me to use that word, and yet we have another structure that is usually not quite explored, traditional leaders. How are we trying to have a nexus of working between religious leaders and traditional leaders? Because believe you me, they also have a key role, particularly in shaping some of these social norms, and even being enablers, or even being barriers to healthcare. So really a reaction to that.
Yeah, swali langu nitaliuliza Kiswahili. Mara nyingi sana serikali ikiwa na miradi ama haya makundi ya kijamii na wanataka kuinvolve religious leaders, mostly huwa wana involve wale religious leaders ambao wako at a higher rank, maybe nationally, ambao wako na sauti, na mara nyingi unapata implementation haiwi rahisi huko mashinani, kwa sababu wale religious leaders ambao wako huko chini ya grassroots hawafikiwi na the proper information at the right time. So mimi swali langu ni kwamba what mechanisms are we going to put in measure so that wale religious leaders ambao wako rahisi kufika mashinani na kudisseminate hizi information zitawafikia haraka ama at the right timing? Kwa sababu tunaona mara nyingi sana, nilikuwa nikiongea na mwingine jana, mara nyingi sana tunapata religious leaders walihusishwa, they made a decision, this was passed by religious leaders, but you come to ask yourself, am I not a religious leader? Hata ukiulizia wengine also in the locality, they don't know what was passed. So what mechanisms are we going to put so that hii mambo ya afya ni muhimu na yatakiwa yafikie watu wengi hasa kule mashinani? Tutatumia mikakati gani kuhakikisha kwamba pia wale religious leaders kule chini ambao wanaonekana hawana voice but wako na bigger voice kwa sababu wana represent watu wengi, itawafikia ili hii mambo au hii campaign iweze kuwa effective?
It's not a question really, it's just a very short comment on the various interventions that have been made that were focused on the power, the role, and the use of religion. And I would just like to add that could be helpful to articulate not only in terms of religion. Religion is like we are Catholics, Muslims, it's an organized kind of thing. But there's what we maintain faith, which relates very much to religion, but is sort of different. Faith is not organized religion, it's an awareness of a higher power, of a God, and having an impact on a person and the way they look at the world. So when we're looking at these things, especially in the current context we're in, it would be good to be clear about that distinction. And so in our strategies, we can use that framework that provides for that distinction. Maybe you can comment on that.
There is something I recently observed, and I think I'm riding on Jane's emphasis on the need to build together to succeed together, the need to include men. The example she was giving of the mother-to-child care. I don't know, like recently, whether you also came across this documentary on Citizen TV of adolescent fathers in Kibera. Yeah, so my observation is that this is an emerging very boldly within our vicinities, and probably as we move forward to embracing inclusivity, it's something we need to look out for. We no longer seem to now be going to have adolescent mothers or girls, but we have the adolescent fathers. It's just something to reflect.
We have religious leaders and we have traditional leaders, okay? How do we address? And I want to go back to what the PhD told us here. The transsectional approach here. No one should be left behind. So for me, we need to appreciate that each of these stakeholders have a role to play. How can we work together? Because it will be a fallacy for the government to think that they can do it on their own. The government on its own will not be able to succeed. Likewise, the policymakers, the NGOs, the religious leaders on their own. So we need the other partners. All of them have a role to play. So bring them on board. Again, I'll give you the case study on ending female genital mutilation within the Muslim community. We found that we have a very big problem before us here. Part of the community strongly believes this is a religious practice. And you know, for religion, it is unquestionable. The Lord has said, period. Okay? Without even going deep into what the Lord has said, but somebody says, the Lord has said. So, again, we had another big problem. In some communities, religion and culture are so intertwined, you cannot distinguish. Take, for example, a Somali. I'm a Maasai myself. I can tell you what is Maasai, what is Islam. But for a Somali sitting there, or Amdigo, their culture and religion are so much intertwined, and that's why you'll find a Amdigo who is so much in Islam, but they go to the Kaya. The Kaya, because, am I right, for the brothers who are from Kwale and the rest? Right. Now, how do you distinguish between the two? Do you only focus on this religious leader who has nothing to do with the tradition, and only focus on these religious leaders, or only deal with the traditional leaders? We need everybody. So we need to bring them together because all of them have a role to play. And it worked for us. We brought the community of traditional leaders, we brought the religious leaders together and asked the religious leaders, what do you want for your community? We want the well-being of our community. What about you religious leaders? What does your religion say? They will quote even from the Quran that religion came to make sure that we do away with the evil things in society and bring good to the society. So our objective is one. Can we come together? You play your part, let me play our part, but this is what we want to achieve, and it works. You leave out one, then that will be a limiting force. You bring them together, so together, as Jane said here, then we can achieve together. But even at the thinking level, at the developing, when you're developing the approach, you have to bring them on the table. So I like what Jane said here. If you want us to work together, can you involve me at all the levels? So can we involve the traditional leaders? So for me, that is the approach, and it has worked.
Just to also add just one small thing to what Sheikh have said, I talked about decoloniality. Many of us despise traditional leaders because we are now born again, we are Christians. And so also inviting us to begin to appreciate the fact that they have a role to play in our societies and they need to be meaningfully engaged. I personally don't appreciate being taken to a space where my perspective is not important, but my presence is. I want presence that equals perspective. When they come and we allow them to be in spaces, let their perspectives matter and let them be used to inform the way policies are formulated. So I still invite us to a decolonial conversation about who then are our traditional leaders and how we need to meaningfully engage them for their perspectives to equal presence. About involving higher ranks, involving those on top and those at the grassroots are always left. I have two quick observations to make. Number one, it's a problem we have created for ourselves because every church operates within a structure. And so when the government wants to engage the leader, for example, the leader of my church, the Anglican Church of Kenya, the government will go to my Archbishop. The government will not come to me. I serve in Nairobi houses, but I come from Siaya. The government will not look for me in Siaya. But another arm of government, the former provincial administration, the chiefs and the rest, would look for me in Siaya because matters in Siaya needs to be addressed. So I think it's a problem that we have created, the way we organize ourselves structurally. It's upon those who are on top to be mindful that I am representing a whole constituency of people and things I say need to reflect their ideas. Did I consult? Did I listen to people from grassroots? When I want to speak as an Archbishop of Kenya, I want to speak about Garissa. Did I listen to the priest in Garissa, for example? So it's a problem we have, and inviting us to a place of humility that I may be in Nairobi, I do not know what's happening in Siaya. I need to listen to the person in Siaya. But the second thing also that I invite us to do is, let us not be the religion I call the conforming one. Mimi, sikuhusishwa, so I can't do anything. I can't do anything because mimi sijambiwa, waliambia Archbishop onesa pitinameongea. So I think it's about also being intentional that whether I am taken to that place of conversation or not, I have a responsibility for the people that God has put under my charge as a priest and engage them. Platforms and microphones are very interesting and lucrative, but the solution comes with real action that we must all be involved in doing. There may be something about faith and spirituality. We talked about organized religion and the aspect of faith. And just also to throw the spanner into the works, many young people today are becoming skeptical about organized religion, and they're beginning to run to, I am spiritual but not religious. They would say, I don't belong to any church. They say, we didn't leave God, we left the church. So they don't want to get involved about these kind of organized. Recently on TikTok, I was there in a conversation and somebody told me church is an organized crime. And they brought Shakahola into the table, they brought people who lost property because pastors asked them to pay. And I would identify with that. And so the aspect of faith and spirituality also needs to come to be mainstreamed in the conversation. There's a huge constituency of young people I know that don't agree with organized, as they call it, organized crime, organized religion. For them, they say we are spiritual, we are people of faith, some of them are agnostics, and all these kind of things. I think also it's important that as we engage that constituency of young people and many people, we need to get to that level as well and have meaningful conversations.
When I was talking, I talked about the changes. I talked about young people, I talked about families that are run by grandparents, street families, single mother families, child-headed families, and of course the issue around the information age. Now we have heard about the adolescent fathers. It's something that is emerging. Have we engaged with it before? I don't think so. We haven't engaged with it. And if you ask right now, we might not even be able to have strategies on how to handle this. But it is an emerging issue, and it also is an issue that the faith community, religious leaders, faith actors will have to now wrestle with to see how do we address this. Because it's an issue, and the people are in the community, and they need solutions from the faith community as well. So it's a good point, Dr. Azira, that you have brought it up. But then I think it's not something that at the moment we might be able to say this is how to approach it. It's an issue that requires that we engage to see how do we respond to this emerging issue.
I think this is a very important thing to note here. Let me look at it from an Islamic perspective. Because we say religion is from God. God knew what will happen, or knows in his knowledge, which is limitless, he knew that one time we shall use a gadget like this to speak to the whole world. But maybe 20 years or 30 years ago, had you told people that a time will come when a small gadget like this will enable you to communicate with the whole world. But if, let's say, when the phones came, we say religion has nothing to do with phones, we would be limiting the knowledge of God, God forbid. So emerging issues, are they within the limitless knowledge of God? The answer is yes. Did God know that a time will come that there will be young adolescent mothers? Yes. Does religion have a solution, a way of addressing that? The answer is yes. If you say no, you are limiting religion, and you're also limiting, by extension, God's knowledge. God Almighty knew a time will come that in Kibra and maybe elsewhere, there will be adolescent fathers. So do we have a solution in religion? Yes, we have. We have two choices, and I think I've learned a lot today here. New vocabulary. You choose to be a conformist, there is nothing you can do about it, and by so doing, you're telling God, God, you gave us a religion that is not sufficient to address all the problems that will come. I believe religion, since it is from God who created us, and He knows what will happen up to the end of the world, any emerging issues, we have to deal with it. At a time, one time, we would go to the pulpit with papers to read our sermons. Today, I see the scholars using iPad. Why? We had now to use the iPads to address. Today, I'm not carrying a copy of the Quran, but if you ask me to refer to the Quran, I'll just pick my phone, and there it is. But somebody would have said, no, this is an innovation. Religion has nothing to do with it. We have even things to do with LGBTQ. I know many religious scholars will say, let us not discuss this. Again, you are being a conformist. Is it a reality in society? Yes. Can religion give us guidance on how to address it? Yes. We have to use religion to address the emerging issues. Thank you.
My name is Nancy. I'm with the Global Listening Project team. And mine is a question regarding something I've observed as we try to recruit religious groups to hold focus group discussions with, as well as interviews. We have splinter groups and extremist groups coming up. And many of them are not part of the umbrella bodies that we are in contact with. How are we, what are we doing as religious communities to deal or to handle these groups to make sure their voices are also at the table, because they have such a massive influence on social media? We've seen some of them borderline comedy and also on the ground. Thank you.
I wouldn't say I have a straight answer or many answers for that. And I love the fact that you've asked religious leaders, how would you engage your colleagues that are extremists? How would you engage your colleagues that still propagate a narrative that is harmful in the society? I don't have one answer to that. I request that what we can do, I suggest as religious leaders, that what we can do, in as much as we want to engage them on the table, we must first of all interrogate, what do you stand for? And how is what you stand for supporting life, affirming life, or denying life? That's why I have supported it many times, the attempt to regulate religion in Kenya. In my scholarship and my writings, I have supported it with caveat and say it's important that we regulate religion in Kenya. And so it's about religious people like myself calling out each other and asking each other, bro, let's have a conversation. What you're doing is harming life. And then when you want to also engage them, I think it's the earlier panel that somebody said about theological underpinnings. Do you know the theologies that undergird the things they do? You would require religious persons and theologians to help you also interrogate the theologies, the misleading theologies they use to undergird what they're doing.
Because you mentioned extremist, and you know these days when you talk about extremist, Islam comes at the forefront. We have people who have used religion to create havoc to the extent that people see Islam today. Actually, if a police officer would come here looking for a terrorist suspect, who do you think would be the first suspect in this room?
Exactly, Muslim brothers.
Who among them, who do you think? Look at all of them. The young ones with the beard and the cancer. And if you are looking for a female terrorist suspect, that lady there would be the first. Unfortunately, Islam now has been associated with extremism. So I think if there is one religion that has been misused by splinter groups, it is Islam. Now, I am in the middle of all that with an organization called BRAVE, that's an abbreviation, Building Resilience Against Violent Extremism. And I want to agree with you, Pastor, here. We begin by understanding the religious narrative, because believe me, they quote from the same Quran that I read. The same teachings. Okay, so number one, we need to interrogate the religious text that they use and how they interpret them. And let me tell you, I agree, and please don't get scared. I'm not part of Al-Shabaab, I'm against them. But I agree with them to some extent. Listen, hold on. Before you call the police, there's a terrorist here. I agree with them because they identify problems within society and they use them as drivers. Today in Kenya, if I use unemployment of the youth as a narrative, will I get a following or not? If I talk about bad governance, will I get a following? If I use corruption, yes. Marginalization and the rest. So I agree with them. They identify real problems facing society. And when you listen to them giving their sermons on Friday, they don't over-focus on going to heaven. They tell the youth how to get employment, how to be decolonized, and the rest. And the youth will be full in that mosque. So don't just dismiss them. Where I differ with them is, now you've identified the problem in society, how do you address it? For them, the end justifies the mean. For me, the end does not justify the means, okay? And I have to use religious reasoning with them. So after I identify the narratives and the drivers, believe me, when we go out there and talk to the youth and tell them violence is not the way, they ask you what is the alternative. Give them the alternative. They have used the Quran to show them it's violence. Use the same Quran to tell them you can achieve the same without being violent, and give them an alternative. So for me, we don't dismiss them. Understand what the reasoning and the narrative that they use, because they use the same text that we use and give an alternative also using religion. So don't dismiss them. The only problem I have is this. I've even told my chairman, I want to sit down with Al-Shabaab face to face. Unfortunately, they will not agree to sit with me, or I might have to write my will first before I sit down with them. Thank you.